Hello, this is David Emanuel back again, and this is going to be the last of the recordings on the Hebrew alphabet for Tutim 316, also serving Nyack College. And today we're going to look at the letters Tzade to Tav, Tzade to Tav, last few letters of the Hebrew alphabet. We begin here with Tzadeh, and as you've seen before with letters like Pei and also Nun, this one has the regular form, which is at the beginning of the word or in the middle of the word. And we also have the final form here as well. And this one, I confess, is a bit tricky to draw, but nevertheless, we will certainly have a go. The Tzadeh, this is how it goes. We go down. That's probably the best way to do it. Just to do an angle like this, like a nose of somebody's face. And then we're just going to go from the middle. We're going to go upwards up here. That's probably the best way which we can write it, a nose, just like that. Do a couple of those, do one more of those, just like a nose, begin like this. And then afterwards come up to the line. You can see exactly where it sits. Now, for the final form, a bit more tricky, but here we're kind of like going to do, it's going to be like a Y, it's going to drop down, and maybe you want to come up like that. So we're going to go down kind of like a Y, and we're going to drop down like that. Or if you want, you can like kind of make it a bit fancy like this. But that's basically what it looks like. The important thing for us when we're drawing this is that the final form drops down below the line. I haven't done those particularly even, but nevertheless, the final form does need to drop down below the line. Concerning the pronunciation, the pronunciation of this is a t sound, a t sound, just as you would pronounce in the word cats, this part here of the word, t, cats. But we're going to use that instead to begin any word that begins with a tzade, 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 like that. So that's the pronunciation of the word. And the transliteration symbol that we use for tzadeh looks like this. It looks like an S, but we put just a dot underneath it. So we're going to use an S, and we're going to put a dot underneath it. Now we have to put a dot underneath it to separate it from the other S sound which we learned, the samech, like this. And that was just a regular S. But here we have to put a dot underneath it just to separate that sound. Okay, the next letter we're going to look at is the Qaf, Qaf. And we're going to draw this, and it's going to be a line down. This one too kind of goes below the line, and you're just going to put like a little angle on it there. So you've almost got a triangle at the top with a line coming down. Draw that again. Again, this one, if you've got lines, this one's probably going to come down before below the line. And notice here, there's a little bit of gap, so you've got a bit of a breathing room, if you like, for the correct form of the shape. And that's a Qaf sound. Now, to all intents and purposes, when you pronounce this, it's going to sound like the letter K, 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 k. Or better still, it's going to sound like the Q originally did with the K sound. Slightly further back in your throat, you'd actually pronounce it. So it's going to be K. And we generally use a Q to pronounce it, to represent it, to transliterate it, as well as to pronounce it. So it's going to sound, if I just do it like that, it sounds like a Q, a K, 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 or it sounds even a bit more like a K. And we use the Q to transliterate it. Remember, we have to have an exact representation in the Latin alphabet of all of the Hebrew letters. And this is Qaf. This is Qaf. Next, we have a Resh. Resh. Now, we're going to draw it. It's kind of like a backwards R. And that's one way of looking at it. If you think of an R going this way, this is kind of switching it round, and it's kind of like a backwards R, and that might be one way of remembering how to pronounce it. It's kind of like an R in pronunciation as well. Let's do a couple of those so you can see. Some fonts may drop down slightly like that, but nevertheless, it's basically, very basically, like a backwards R. The pronunciation is like an R, as in rabbit, let's say, generally, and that's how most English speakers are going to pronounce it. But be aware that this is a semi-guttural sound, and the correct pronunciation, if you really want to be perfect, then you want to try and pronounce it from the back of the throat, like a r, r. So we'd say resh, resh, resh. But if you're not able to do that, I fully understand, and you can just pronounce it as a regular R, as in rabbit. And no harm will come to you were you to do that. Similarly, we just use the R, a regular R, in order to transliterate it. Just a normal R, nothing strange about it because we have no duplicates. No final forms, no dageshes, dots, nothing like that inside at all. Two more letters to go. Well, kind of two. We've got one letter here. This is a shin up here. This one here, we call it shin. I'm going to spell it like this just for the time being. And this one is very similar, but this one's actually called sin. Sin. Now, the basic shape of the letter is exactly the same. But notice the diacritical dot right up here in the top right-hand corner versus here in the left-hand corner. That makes a relatively large distinction when it comes to pronouncing it. It creates a degree of confusion. In order to draw this, I suppose I would just do make a U, and then from the bottom left corner, I would draw a line straight up like that. So we do a U. If you think of a bottom left corner going up to the middle, just like that. And of course, we have to put, because it's a shin, I'm going to put a dot just on the top right. That needs to be extended just a bit there. So we're going to go a shin like this with a dot just on top. The sin, I didn't draw parallel lines for this, but it's exactly the same. But there's going to be a dot on the left-hand side. So we're going to have a dot on the left-hand side. So this is just how you would write it down. So that's the sin. I think I maybe just better change the color to continue here. The pronunciation of the shin, two slightly different, or largely different pronunciations. The pronunciation of the shin is like an SH, as in shoot, shoot. And it's this sound here. But with the sin, it is slightly different because that sounds like a regular S, as in sock. I'm going to put socks. I'm going to do the British spelling here because that's where I originate from. So we're going to say socks like that for the S of the sin. That's this one here. Sin, we pronounce socks, whereas the shin, we pronounce sh, as in shoot. And the diacritics are also slightly different for this. Let me just change color again. For the diacritics for the shin is going to be an S. They're both based on an S, but we're going to have a little kind of a cup on top of it. So we've got an S, and then when you see that, it's a sh sound. So if I were to rewrite this using a diacritic, it would be shoot, like this, shoot. And maybe I should just draw a dotted line, just a bit of a confusing screen here, but I do just want to make this clear as to how we do that. And then the sin, I'm going to start down here Just a moment. Good. The sin is slightly different. We're going to use an S again, but this time we're going to throw a little line just like that up there. Now, the reason why we do this is because if we just use a regular S, then there could be some confusion once again with the samech, which is also a regular S. And because of that, we have to make the sin individual and special, if you like, and we do that by adding a small diacritic mark above it like that. So we've got two sounds there, shin and sin. None of these have final forms. And that brings us to the last item, which is tav. Tav, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And this one, if I'm going to draw it, so I normally draw it. I normally go draw a little line with a little foot on the end, and then come. It's got a little bit of a lip on it just there, and I'm going to come down. So I just draw that line there, and just give it a bit of a lip, and come down just like this. Do another one for you. What you really have to pay attention to is this top lip here and this bottom lip here. One of the problems I've seen with students in drawing this is that they tend to make the bottom way too big like that, and it becomes a very different shape entirely. So do just remember to keep the foot small. In spite of the fact I've come down here, it doesn't actually, we don't actually go below the line, just as this is a better one and this is a better one, and obviously this is the best one we have altogether. The tav can take a dagesh, it may take a dagesh or it may not. And regards the pronunciation for you, it will be the same. So whether it has a dagesh, it will still be pronounced T, and whether it does not have a dagesh, it will still be pronounced T. Now here, of course, I'm still talking about the pronunciation, not the transliteration. So the pronunciation is going to be T as in tap or toe or tiddlywinks or whatever you may have. And both of these are going to sound the same. This is my sign for sound. Now, as you can see, it takes, as I said, takes the dagesh, may or may not take the dagesh, no effect on the sound, but there is an effect on the transliteration. Without the dagesh, then we are going to write the T with a line through it, like that. And that's to distinguish between the two. So we write the T with a line through it. With the dagesh, we are just going to write a T with no line through it at all. Regular T as in tap. But remember, for the sake of pronunciation, we are going to pronounce these two tavs with or without the dagesh exactly the same. So that sees the end of the Hebrew alphabet. We will continue with a few more slides later on in this series, just to recap their, or to summarize, if you like, their sounds.